So just to give you a little bit of background from where I'll be reading, this is my book. It's really more, when I tackled it, it was just really started out as a character study. I just really thought it would be interesting to look into the life and times of a professional fool in medieval times, and the story built from there. So it was fun to try to focus on being a little more lighthearted and whimsical where I could. And I think humor is really hard to write. It took me a while to decide what part to read. There's a few parts I was like, well, that's kind of intense and would be fun. But I ultimately decided for a section that hopefully shows a bit more of my main character's, of his personality and some of his humor and how he deals with situations. So as the story starts, we have my main character, Farrago, the professional fool. He's in disguise right now in a neighboring kingdom to go after the scullery maid who actually turned out to be the queen of the kingdom next door. And he knows from their childhood days that she was once called Dandelion Head. And he's using everything he knows about her to try to woo her in this new circumstance without making it seem like that. He's also being evaluated by counselors because they're trying to see who would be a good king for this kingdom. So he's being tested on various fronts at the same time. So the first scene is a scene with him and the counselors, who he doesn't like very much. Fortunately, he has a very political background. He's the quintessential wise fool. And then we find a little excursion he has when he's trying to fulfill the task of finding the perfect flower for his girlfriend, for their new queen. All counselors looked the same to me. Same long black robes, same sneer, usually even the same voices. They all seemed like one united, surly man with many bodies. The one that marched down in front of the long row of suitors was no different. We all sat behind a long table, staring up at his nose. I suppose it was unfortunate that anyone's nostrils should flare so much, so that should set him apart at least. Running a kingdom isn't all wine and women and sending men off to war, the counselor lectured in that universal whining counselor voice. A king must be able to make hard decisions and find the best solution to the hundreds of problems that may come before him. I rolled my eyes. Dealing with counselors was another area where I didn't feel the need to wear a mask that said anything other than, I think you're ridiculous and you're wasting my time. All the counselors I'd ever met used only solutions that involved blood or carnage or caused someone pain and suffering. So today, the counselor continued as his nostrils flared embarrassingly wide, you will each be given scrolls detailing kingdom affairs that we as a council have come across in our lives. You will each write how you would deal with the situation, and then we as a council will evaluate your responses. May I remind you, he said, smiling at us like we were babies, the late king granted equal power between his council and the queen to choose the next king of Seacrest, so be wary of your responses. Several more robes shuffled out and set scrolls before each of us. Begin. Pox. I couldn't believe this. Trying to play the part, I opened my scroll like the others and spread it on the table. I blinked several times to get my eyes accustomed to the frilly writing. When so many words were put before me, I usually found it easiest to pick out maybe one or two important ones. All right, I knew that letter. Plag, plog, plague, plagui? Plague. There must have been some problem with the plague. Got it. No, I didn't. This is a waste of time, I declared, lifting my head from my scroll. I'm fairly certain I heard a groan-up, oh no, not him again, from the other suitors. The flare-nosed counselor strode over to me, looking down his nose very effectively as his nostrils became even bigger. I thought not to grin. I beg your pardon, Sir Hubert, the counselor said icily. If you are refusing our right to give tests and make evaluations of the suitors, there is little reason for you to remain in Seacrest. Pox all counselors. On the contrary, a moment ago you lectured us on the difficulty of running a kingdom. Well, I should think a king would need to use his time wisely. Surely problems could be spoken directly to me, and I could respond much faster than reading and writing a response. Where I come from, the king uses scribes and only rarely writes himself except to sign his name to declarations. He can't be bothered with such menial tasks, and neither can I. The counselor's nostrils flared in and out quickly several times. He snatched my scroll off the table so fast I jumped. Very well then, Sir Hubert. You will give your response verbally for all present. Yes, Farrago did this all the time. The counselor cleared his throat. A plague decimates the population of your kingdom. A neighboring kingdom discovers an antidote, but it is costly. How do you negotiate exchange for the remedy, and how do you decide who receives it? Well, this one was actually a little difficult. First things first, a good king always listens to his counselors before making a decision. What did you or one of your comrades do in this situation? What would you counsel? My nosy friend raised his eyebrows and turned to the rows of counselors standing still as statues next to the wall while they waited for us to finish writing our responses. A small round one came forward. I counseled that just enough be bought to first be given to the king and those of most importance in the castle. Those next to receive antidote were those who could pay the most handsomely, thus redeeming the lost treasury. By then, the plague had taken whom it would and had left only the strongest peasants in the kingdom, thereby actually strengthening the population. It was my turn to raise my eyebrows. Really? Well, I'm sure the treasury would remain unharmed. No doubt you had problems with food shortages the next year due to the lack of farmers and merchants to actually produce them. And no doubt you had to quell a few uprisings from outraged peasants who had lost their families. Did you have to raise taxes later in order to support your armies to stop the uprisings, which only led to more shortages? It might be prudent to solve one problem and create as few others as possible. I can see two possible alternate solutions to this issue. You could have bought a small amount of antidote and given it to your chemists and scholars to analyze in the hopes that they could create more. There's no guarantee how that would work out, so you'd have to come up with a backup plan. When faced with a situation where you are completely dependent upon another kingdom for some commodity, it's best to analyze one's own resources as a potential barter. Seacrest, for example, has some of the best fishing among any of the coasts. Certain fish could be preserved and sold as delicacies. Seacrest also has master shipbuilders and could build a vessel or so for the neighboring kingdom. If your chemists don't figure out how to make the cure themselves, it would cut your dependence on the other kingdom. If they don't, bartering would make the other kingdom long-term dependence on your own products, while you are only short-term dependence on them for as long as the plague lasts. Once the plague leaves, they still want your product and you have no need of theirs. This makes the remedy plentiful, making it possible for farmers and craftsmen to keep producing and strengthening the overall economy with a monopoly on your own product. There would be more jobs for peasants, more money flowing into your kingdom with little flowing out, and no rebellions or shortages to deal with later. Do you follow me? It was almost as if Fendrel had entered me and spoken through me. It was exactly what he would have said. I know it. The short little counselor huffed like a little owl fluffing his feathers and turned to his nostrily master. Nose Flare was still pumping his nostrils in and out and looking like he wanted to squish me. Interesting ideas, he commented. No telling if they would work in a real situation, of course. We will evaluate your response with the other written ones, which will be difficult without having something to refer to. Yes, remembering what I said would require more brain power, I agreed. You are excused, Sir Hubert, the counselor commanded. I got readily to my feet. Prince Chasm rose at the same time from the far end of the table and walked over to the head counselor even as I left. My scroll, he said as he put it in the hands of Noseflare. I wrote my response while Sir Hubert was speaking. Some of us can handle multiple methods of exchanging information just as fast, and sometimes we must do things even when we may not like them. Noseflare raised his eyebrows again, but not with disdain or correction. He was impressed. Quite right, Prince Chasm. Thank you very much. We look forward to reading your response. You are excused as well. Chasm bowed and joined me at the door, and we exited together. You're just trying to get on their good side, I said as we walked down the corridor. Naturally, he said. If you keep acting as you do, you will give me multiple opportunities to stand out in contrast. He smiled. I'm glad we are off after different things and are not truly in competition with each other, aren't you? There it was again, that hint of a grin that suggested he would kill me if I got in the way of his quest to rule the kingdom. Indeed, I replied with camaraderie as false as his was. That's relief. Still, you must be careful. I would hate to lose you. Try to humor them and be nicer to the queen. What was he playing at? You're right, of course. I'll try. Thank you. And by the way, you were right. Your answer, I mean, was actually quite thorough, especially your comment about not creating future problems. You think quickly. Oh, thank you. I tried. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to the matter of what flowers to get for Highness. You didn't get my scroll last night, didn't you? Oh, yes, I did. Thank you. I should get on that task as well. Good luck to you. He smiled and left me. I would never make sense of that man. Oh well, at least I had other tasks to occupy myself with. Willing myself to forget how sore riding made me, I rode out into the kingdom of Seacrest. The castle itself was up a rocky incline, and the kingdom spread out on all sides, most of the cottages hugging the coastline where the fishermen lived. I rode through the town, not failing to notice how run down the village seemed, or how the locals always kept their faces down, especially when I passed. Constance had said that Seacrest had been through a lot. They were well due for some respite. I rode out the way I had come in, heading toward the meadows and farmland where the cottages were much more widely spaced. When the sea was a distant line, I stopped by a tree standing on the edge of the road. If I rode farther, I would pass a farmer's cottage and his land of tilled ground, but this place was undeveloped. The land was tall with weeds and grains and wildflowers. I tied the reins of my horse to a low branch where he could still graze and walked out into the meadow. I took a deep breath. Pox, it was good to be here. It was good to be away from the tightness of castle life and those beastly counselors. I hadn't realized it until just now. I sprawled spread eagle in the field and let a mild breeze blow the stalks of plants over me. I began to fade, letting my eyes droop. Plop. There, we knew that. Ah! My arms and legs jerked in the air, but the weight was on my stomach. You know, it's funny. The weight belonged to a knee-high lump of a girl. I was no great judge of ages, but she was very small and would most certainly have not come up quite to my knees. She was dressed in a clean frock, and her hair, the color of the crust of a perfectly baked loaf, was tied into 2 ponytails on either side of her head. She scooted forward at my chest and tapped the tip of my nose with an impossibly small finger. "Nose funny," she repeated with that childish, high-pitched baby voice and tenor that could never be mimicked by an adult. "Hello, my lady." I sat up on my elbows. "Fancy a seat?" I scooted up further and deposited my new friend on my lap. "And it's fake, if that makes you feel any better. But even if it wasn't, you'd still say the same thing. What's your name?" She stared at me with big blue eyes and said nothing. I patted my chest. "Farrago," I said. "Farrago. What's your name?" "Fergo." I beat myself on the head when I realized my mistake. No, I'm Sir Hubert. Hubert. Pox. Pox," my friend repeated. "Herbert." I laughed. How refreshing she was after constantly putting on faces for the court of Seacrest. It was really no fun being Sir Hubert. My nameless little visitor opened her other small hand and stretched it out to me. "Rock," she said. She had, in fact, 2 small pebbles. "Juggo." "Are you collecting pebbles?" I guessed. "In a jug?" I looked around but saw no container. My friend tossed the pebbles in the air and waved her hands around. The rocks hit my legs and thudded lightly on the ground. "I have a better idea than rocks," I announced. "Can you help me find some flowers? Some yellow flowers?" "Flower," she repeated. "Lellow flower." She got to her small, slightly bowed legs and toddled away faster than I would have given her credit for, weaving her way through plants and grains taller than she was. She pulled out a flower when we passed one. "Lellow flower," she handed it to me. Actually, no, that's red," I corrected her. "I need yellow." "Oh," she said and continued. She led me just a little farther. I saw them before she did because I was so much taller. "Dandelions," I exclaimed as the field gave way to them. "Well done, little one." She became very excited when I merrily began picking the flowers and happily joined me, though she often only got just the tops instead of the whole flower. Every now and then I would toss her one and she would giggle hysterically, which is another reason why I like children. It's so easy to make them laugh. We may have had a small dandelion fight, which she may or may not have won, but at least I ended up with a fine bouquet. "Mommy," my friend said, clutching a long-stemmed dandelion in one hand. "Yes, that's perfect for Mommy," I agreed with her. "And because you were such a big help, I have something for you, all right?" I set my bouquet of flowers down and found 2 palm-sized pebbles and a similarly sized hardened clump of dirt. I stood and looked in all directions. Except for the cottage in the distance with the people too small to see, we were completely alone. Hang it all, I began to juggle. And it felt so good. My little friend squealed so loud that at first I thought she was upset. But it turns out that squealing is how females show many emotions, including being nearly delirious with joy. She opened her mouth, clapped her hands, and jumped up and down in obvious, uncontainable bliss. "Juggo!" she screamed. "Juggo! Juggo!" Juggo? The realization hit me suddenly. Juggle! Little Snip knew the word for juggle! I dropped my item suddenly. "Anna!" A faint voice carried over the breeze. "Anna!" Well, it sounded like I was done anyway. "More!" my friend, now known as Anna, begged. "More!" But I shook my head. "Sounds like Mommy is calling you," I informed her. "You better go give her your flower." "Flower," Anna said. "Bye, Juggle Man." "Pox!" She couldn't go around saying that. "Wait!" I stopped her, digging into the small pouch at my side and pulling out 2 gold coins. "Here, this is for Mommy, too." I put 1 gold coin in her small hand and realized that she couldn't hold the other without letting go of her flower, so I returned it to the bag. There. Now I was Shiny Coin Man. "Ooh!" Anna made a happy baby noise. "Anna!" Oh dear, the peasant woman was coming this way. "Bye, Juggle Man," Anna repeated. "Run to Mommy," I urged her, "and don't drop your coin." Anna ran into the tall weeds, and I watched just long enough to see that the rustling plants rustled in the direction of the ever-approaching woman. Then I snatched up my bouquet and ran to my horse before the woman could catch me. I don't know why I felt so guilty. Maybe it was because I'd betrayed myself to her daughter. Oh well, at least I'd gotten what I'd come for, and I was sure of at least one of two things. I either had Thea's favorite flower or her least favorite. We would see. Do you have questions now, or?
We can take a couple of questions for Bethany, and then we'll save the rest for after everything is done. So.
Not all at once.
So you're next.
Sorry, you than you.
What made you pick that title?
The Perfect Fool. The working title I had actually gone with when I was writing the manuscript was No More Juggling, but there's a point where one character calls Farrago the Perfect Fool, and I had a friend point out to me, that might make a good title, and I thought that was a good call. So that's what it turned out to be. Sorry, did you go on?
The next book is going to be the sequel to this.
I actually planned this as a standalone. I have been mulling over the idea of doing a sequel. I feel like I have enough material, but it's not necessarily in the works just yet.
Well, apart from now I want to read that, when writing, like when you're saying things like, I didn't know when to say, like when you said like nostrils flared, or instead of say nostrils flared, like make a simile, or how do you know which words are appropriate to be able to describe without it being?
If I'm understanding your question, that was a trick writing something in medieval times. The language itself is actually pretty casual, but I never used the word okay because I actually know where that word comes from, and I knew they wouldn't have it back then. I don't know the etymology of a lot of words. I'm sure they use
Well, I
words.
meant in writing your novel.
And in
In
writing
describing the characters.
and describing the characters. Since this one was written in first person, I had to try to stick with things that my main character would know and fit for the time, if I'm understanding your question. So it had a lot to do with the fact that Farrago was really probably going to make fun of a lot of people, and so when he did make comparisons, sometimes it was either him kind of explaining to himself how he perceived somebody, or like in the case of him thinking about the counselor, it was just him latching on to the biggest, most annoying characteristic of the counselor, and that totally defined that person for him. Is that kind of answer your question? Sort of.
Sort of.
Sort of.
I didn't describe it.
So we'll probably save the rest of the questions for Bethany until the end, and she'll be signing books in the back here. We'd like to thank her. Now we will have readings first by Natasha Smith and then by Jeff Bateman. And after that we will have our second featured reader, Jill Bowers. So, Natasha.